corpses. That he wasn't one of them was a matter of pure chance. "Too bad, Althea," he muttered, his thoughts turning from the letter's author, Charlotte, to the woman behind the letter. His nemesis, his warden, his guardian, his grandmother. Althea. The malevolent old woman had told Charlotte that Jim was a bastard, and that, as such, he wouldn't inherit anything. Not a name, not a place in society, not wealth. Charlotte had believed her, because Althea did have a name, a position in society, and wealth. When he'd confronted Althea, she'd coldly informed him that she would destroy, overturn, and prevent anything that ran counter to her will, and it was her will to ennoble the family name, which meant Jim would marry only when and who she chose. The only way he would ever truly escape her influence, she'd said, would be to die. He'd told her he would never bow to her will, and that he would rather die than be her puppet. And then she'd looked him in the eye and told him, yes, she would prefer if he died too, since his younger half-brother, Jock, was so better qualified to make the family proud. So, he'd made a deal with the devil. He'd shed his name, go away, disappear forever, for all intents and purposes, die. The courts could declare him dead and give everything that should have been his to his half-brother, Jock. In exchange, Althea would return the land that had been a bride's gift to her husband's family, and which Althea had inherited from her dead husband, to Jim's mother's family in the New Mexican territory. Althea had jumped at the offer. And so, a little less than a year ago, the boy he'd been had died, and James Owens had been born. The only thing he'd kept from his former life had been Charlotte's goodbye letter. Now, even that would soon be gone. "Bloody idiot," he muttered, looking sadly at the fly-blown corpse of the horse that had been shot out from under him. "If you were so eager to die, you could have just jumped off Tower Bridge. At least you could have spared a good horse." As soon as he'd finished twisting the last plug, he ripped a band of material off the bottom of his tattered shirt. He tore it into several thinner strips and tied the ends together, tucking a paper plug in at each knot. Then he rubbed cartridge grease up and down the length of the makeshift fuse. When he was done, he took off his shirt, belt, and boots, shedding anything that might reflect the sunlight. His plan was simple. Come sunset, when the setting sun briefly blazed right in his enemy's eyes, he'd light the fuse and belly-crawl out to a shallow dip in the ground he'd spotted 100 yards out. By the time he reached the depression, the linen would burn down to the gunpowder-filled plug, explode, then burn down to the next plug, and so on. The Mahdist's eyes would stay on the boulder, thinking he was desperately wasting his last shots, while in fact he'd be sneaking into their camp to take off on one of their horses. That was the theory, anyway. Because aside from not knowing if the setting sun would be bright enough to cover his scramble for that depression, he had no idea if the linen would burn, or how fast it would if it did. And he didn't know if the gunpowder would sound anything like a rifle shot. And even if that all worked out, the rest of his plan depended on his being able to get up on a horse, sans saddle, but hopefully not sans bit, with a broken collarbone and a bum arm, take off and stay ahead of his pursuers until he, well, got away. No, sir, the situation did not look at all promising. He was good with a horse, damned good. As a kid, he'd been taken under the wings of his uncle's Comanche ranch hands, the best riders in the world. The question was he good enough? He looked up. The sun had come to rest on the horizon now, spreading colours across the sky, as bright yet as delicate as a houri's veil. Another minute, and it would flare before disappearing. That was his chance, or as much of a chance as he was going to get. He tilted his head back, closing his eyes. He was 20 years old, and he did not want to die. "I swear, God, if I make it out of this in one piece, I'll never ever do something stupid."